Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to TruthCourt.net, the home of the Internet Court of Truth and Lies. We're happy to see you here today. We thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to show you what we're doing. In previous videos that we've made, we've talked about how the Internet Court of Truth and Lies can help you get a handle on things that you're seeing on the Internet. There are a lot of things in the media and on the Internet that we're not sure of. They're difficult to tell whether they're truth or not. Well, TruthCourt provides a platform for folks to use to explore those kinds of claims and to get a better handle on what they're doing, what these truths or lies are. In practice, it's a pretty straightforward process. It's like a court. It's based on a traditional Western-style civil court. So, in general, how it works is you find something on the media or online that you're suspicious of. You go to truthcourt.net, sign in if you're not a member. It's easy and free. Then once you become a member, you can act as a plaintiff and file a case proposing whether or not you think the claim that you found is true or false. When you enter your case to set your case up, you're going to answer 8 universal verdict questions that help you dissect the statement. The next step is you're going to invite some jurors. You're going to invite folks, send them emails, inviting them to be part of your case and act as jurors. Those folks are going to answer the same 8 questions that you did, the same 8 verdict questions. And then when it's all done, you compare answers and see what other folks are thinking about your claim. Now, that's the traditional way that we've been using the court. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. The court has other potential as well, has other potential uses, and one of them is as a tool for education. You can imagine that a teacher might be able to make use of this, and today I'm going to show you how that can happen. What we're going to do today is we're going to try a literary case. We're going to do Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, and we're going to talk about that. So we're going to go to that right now. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you what's going on. I'm going to show you the case that I entered about that. And as we go through it, I'm going to talk to you about how it can possibly be used as a tool for education, how a teacher might use this. All right. I should be sharing my screen now, and I'm showing you my case. And the case today is called, Is the Telltale Heart's Narrator Mad or Devious? Now, this is an Edgar Allan Poe short story that thousands, tens of thousands of students have had to read and discuss in class. And today, we're going to take the traditional and very familiar to teachers question about the narrator in that case, in that short story. I'm calling this a literary narrator lie. And as you can see here on the screen, on the left column is our status column. It tells us where we are, what's happening with the case. I have 4 jurors. In the details column here in the middle, I'm going to provide information that the jurors are going to use to answer their verdicts in the far right column over here. So I'm going to expand this window, and we're going to talk a little bit about the case. The case is Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. It's a classic short story, as I mentioned before. It's narrated by an unnamed protagonist who tries to convince the readers of his sanity, despite what appears to be a very disturbed state of mind. The narrator, in a few words to summarize the story, the narrator kills his housemate, claiming he did so because he had an intense aversion to this old man's pale blue eye. The narrator claims that he believed the eye was malevolent, and this is the reason why he plotted the old man's murder, claiming that it was the only way to rid himself of the eye's presence. The story then goes on to explain how for 7 days, for 7 nights, the narrator sneaks into the old man's room, observing him as he sleeps, planning the murder. On the 8th night, his agitation reaches the climax, and the narrator then executes his plan. He suffocates the old man He dismembers the body and conceals the remains beneath the floorboards. Seemed like a perfect crime successfully executed. But the narrator has a problem. He claims that he can still hear the old man's heart beating, even though he's dismembered beneath the floorboards, and it grows louder as time passes. His paranoia becomes pretty palpable. He invites the police in to his home because they had heard a shout, and he's so confident that he created the perfect crime that he invites the police into the very room where the old man was sleeping, where he killed and dismembered him. All the while, though, the narrator believes he's hearing the old man's heart pound. So there's a tremendous amount of tension that goes on, and it talks, and Poe in the story develops it brilliantly, whether or not the man is mad or whether he's just pretending to be mad. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take up that question. And in true literary purposes, we're hoping that the jurors will use direct quotes from the story to back up their answers that they're going to give on their 8 verdict questions. So I'm taking the position today, and this is not the normal position that folks take when they read this, but I'm going to take a contrary position that the narrator has been pretending to be mad, pretending to be driven so by the pale blue eye, so he could escape punishment. My contention is that he killed the man for some other reason, even though he said he wasn't doing it for money and that he loved the old man. Killing and dismembering someone is hardly behavior for someone that you love. So I'm saying that the narrator is lying about being mad, and that he's pretending to be mad so that he can escape the worst kind of punishment for his act. Okay, and below here you can see that I have put this in the form of a proposition, and the proposition is here under markup, and it's the narrator in the telltale heart is in control of his faculties and reliable. This is not the usual position that folks take when they read this story, but I'm taking it because it'll be good to argue against. Notice that I have highlighted it in blue, meaning that I think this is the truth, that the narrator is in control of his faculties and is reliable. All right, so I'm going to go over to the verdict section here, and I'm going to go through my answers to that question. And remember, the question is, he's reliable and in control of his faculties. My answer to the first question, is it the truth? I'm saying yes. Notice I'm only 50% sure because I don't think it's a popular view, but it is a defensible view, I believe, because I'll show you from my quotes in the text. This is why I think that he is in control. The narrator tells us many times that he's not mad. He says, and this is a quote from the story, "Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Mad men know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, and with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him." Doesn't particularly sound like a mad frenzy to me. It sounds like a premeditated act. Second question, is it the whole truth? Again, I'm saying yes. Again, I'm only 50% confident. And I say that his actions clearly show that these were premeditated. His comments clearly show that his actions were premeditated, not done in any mad frenzy. Consider what he said. He said, "And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he had passed the night." So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Does not sound like a madman. Clear premeditation. And he's in control of his faculties because he's lying very well to the old man. Is it nothing but the truth? Again, I'm saying yes, with a 50% confidence. I'm saying he's acting out of a premeditated, well-rehearsed plan, carefully, step by step. It reveals he's in full possession of his faculties. And here's a quote that backs that statement up. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers and my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. Doesn't sound particularly mad. Sounds like he's moving through a plan that has been premeditated. What is the deceit in this lie? Well, the deceit, the way I see it, is that the narrator is mad. I don't think he is. I think he's perfectly sane. I think he's pretending to be mad to escape the consequences of his act. His careful work reveals this act. Terrible though it was not done in madness. Here's a quote that that Poe puts into the narrator's mouth. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waxed, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. Doesn't seem to me like a madman. Is the deceit or truth intended? Yes. In my feeling, it is. And again, I'm 50% sure, because I think that a contrary case can be made also. I'm saying the narrator is pretending to be mad to escape punishment for his cruel, well-thought-out murder scheme. Consider this statement as proof of his perfectly rational plan. And note at the end, he even laughs. Here's the quote. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha ha. So he's proud of what he did. It does not seem that he was acting out of madness. It seemed that he was acting out of a premeditated plan. What's the motivation? Well, I think the motivation behind this false display of madness is to escape punishment for his heartless act of murder. I think that he was pretending to be mad so that he would be able to not be summarily executed for his act, but be treated like a madman and maybe later escape. He knew that the old man's murder would eventually be discovered when he turned up missing, so he deviously confessed, all the while pretending to be mad. His false madness was further demonstrated by his cleverly invented claim that he could still hear the heartbeats of his victim. What better way to make the authorities believe that he was mad than by claiming he was not, while at the same time claiming to hear the heartbeats? I think it was a very nice act on his part. What's the social acceptability? Well, I don't know. As a critic analyzing this story and using our court here to do it, it's always acceptable for a critic to posit a proposition like this and then examine the consequences of it. And that shows us how the text works, how the author worked, what it tells us about society of the time, a lot of different things. But it's always acceptable for a critic to do that. But regarding the moral implications of what it was that was done, it's never acceptable to feign madness to hide a terrible crime. So there's a great deal of conflict here, which really works to the story's benefit. Poe's use of the claim as a literary trope to create and maintain tension throughout the text is masterful, gives readers a penetrating expose of the complexity of human nature. And finally, what label would improve the claim? If you saw this claim that I made, that the narrator was sane, if there was a label beside it, what would it be? This is what I propose. This is one judgment of the narrator's reliability, but there is evidence for many others. The Telltale Heart's an excellent example of how a writer like Poe, a master, used a simple but brilliantly written short story to explore the indeterminacy of language as an indicator of human behavior. Now, that's my case, but let me explain to you how I think this might work for a teacher. If a teacher had this story assigned in class, it it would be a simple matter for the teacher to send emails and create them as an assignment for 8 students in the class. Send emails to 8 students in the class a few days before the class, let them work up their answers. And then when the day came for the actual trial, to go ahead and discuss all that with the entire class, including the 8 jurors. It would make an excellent engagement tool. It would be an excellent way to dissect the various aspects of how the story worked. And it would be a good way to engage folks, young folks, in a way that is familiar to them. They could do it on their phones. So I think this shows a very good way that the TruthCourt can be used in not its traditional, the way we've been talking about here all along, but it's also a quite powerful education tool that could be used in classroom by teachers. All right, so that's my case. And at this point, I see that if I'm looking over here on the left-hand column, the status column, we have 4 jurors accepted, 4 jurors finalized. We see over here, I'm looking at the verdicts, and we have our color bars that indicate kind of who's in agreement with me and who isn't. Again, I'm blue. I'm saying it is the truth. That's yes. Red is no, and yellow is don't know. So I'm seeing that a fair number of people are disagreeing with me on my indications, which is fine, which is the way I intended it, to stimulate discussion, like a teacher would if it were assigned in class. So at this point, I'd like to invite the jurors to make any comments that they would like about the case and about what they think about all of this.
Yeah.
Anybody have any comments?
Yeah, I utterly and completely disagree with the interpretation, and think that this guy was completely mad, and he wasn't. So confusing the word frenzy with mad is not necessarily correct. Okay, I think this was a madman of the more traditional type, which is not necessarily in a frenzy. In which case he murdered the guy as a madman, and the self-deceit he used to murder the guy turned on him, and the heart just kept beating louder and louder, and that was self-deceit too. Okay. It's fairly unlikely that heart was beating. I
would say, since it was dismembered.
I'm absolutely opposite on this.
Well, that's a fair enough comment. Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, Frank, I thought it was very interesting, the position that you took on this. And I actually went back and I actually made some notes. I went back through it the second time because here's my problem. And I think Poe did this intentionally to leave the reader anchorless in reading this, because he doesn't tell you that the guy is ranting and raving in a jail cell, or if he's sitting in a witness box before a court. It's just untethered. So it's possible that he could be taking a position to defend his actions and feign madness, or he could just be ranting and nuts. The context is important. You presume a certain context in your presentation, which is perfectly fine, but I don't find it in the story. So I can perceive it in one way that totally supports your position. But if I just let it dangle there, then is he deluded? Is he nuts? Is he smart? I don't think you can tell. And I think that's what Poe intended. He wanted it to be dissonant for the reader. I think that was his intent. So that you'll see in my responses. Sometimes I'm with you and sometimes I diverge because I could go either way.
And I think the word untethered for the story is a beautiful word because it is an untethered story. It isn't, you don't have a way to actually know the truth except the, in my argument is except for the fact that this guy was deceiving himself the whole way. And deceiving the other guy, the guy he murdered.
Okay, anybody else? Good. I'm glad to see this kind of discussion, and I can imagine if this were in a classroom that this kind of discussion could be taking place for a whole class period easily. It provides an entry point into the story, and it provides a viewpoint that allows people to take a position and defend it, and to have to defend it. Now, I know the position that I took is really not very defensible, but I took it anyhow because I thought it would be good for you guys to have something to argue against and to show that as a teacher, that's the way you do. Sometimes you take an indefensible position to have your students argue against it so that they will learn in the process of doing that. So let's see what we learned in the process of doing this. Let's go take a look at our answers. All right, now, as I can see here, there's quite a bit of a disagreement with me, which is what I expected. All right, let's see. Nobody whatsoever copied my answer 100%. Because you see the icon here, the little copy symbol with yes, it does not appear down below here anywhere. So let's see what juror number 1 said. Juror number 1 said, this is a self-deception. He believes he is in control of the lies he makes up for the old man to kill him, makes for an out-of-control lie of the telltale heart beating, which drives him mad. Okay, that's a very defensible opinion, but from a literary standpoint, it's not supported by anything in the text. That's an interesting opinion. Here's number 2. The answer is no. Driven by fear of his housemate's evil eye, the narrator says he shrewdly plans to murder, kills and dismembers him, and successfully hides the corpse. When the police arrive, they find nothing amiss, and he is triumphant. And he quotes from the text, I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. Good. Why would it have been rational at that point to have pretended to be deranged by the ever louder, unheard heartbeat of his victim and to have confessed only if he was convinced that further investigation, disappearance of his housemate, putrid decomposition of the corpse would have found him guilty? The reader is not convinced of this. His nervousness seems to have made him lose control of his faculties. So that's a good answer supported by the text. All right, juror number 3. Let's see. There are several factors that suggest that the narrator is not in control of his faculties and is suffering from severe mental illness. Okay, good. Mental instability, obsession with the old man's eye, meticulous planning. Okay. Auditory hallucinations, claiming to hear the old man's heart. Repeated denials of insanity. Overemphasis on rationality, describes at length how they carefully planned and executed the crime. And confession of the crime seems to be a result of a deteriorating mental state rather than a rational admission. His erratic behavior, delusions, and gradual descent into madness clearly demonstrate that he is not in control of his faculties and is an unreliable narrator. I believe the narrator's view of reality is severely distorted, causing them to genuinely believe their version of events. Good answer, no support from the text, however. So you get marks against you for that in the literary analysis end of things. Okay. Juror number 4, yes. Juror number 4 says, yes, he is in control with only a 40% confidence level. The narrator gives a clear and detailed account of his actions and motivations. Reliability is questionable, however, because his sanity is not assured and his account could be riddled with delusions. Again, a good opinion. Would have liked to have seen something from the text to back that up. All right. Is it the whole truth? Let's see. Again, nobody agrees with me. Juror number 1 says 100% confidence it is not the whole truth. The truth is that self-deception is in control of his facilities and is not reliable because it ultimately makes him truly mad. Juror number 2, the narrator is not in complete control of his facilities if, as he says, he often wakes up groaning in mortal terrors arising from the bottom of the soul when charged with awe. Okay, I like that answer, and it's supported by a quote from the text. Juror number 3 says no. Answer confidence 90%. While the narrator initially presents himself as rational and composed, it becomes evident as the story unfolds that he is not in control of his faculties. His unreliability becomes increasingly apparent as he tries to justify his actions and convince the reader of his sanity. I think the plaintiff's statement doesn't show the full complexity of the narrator's character. Okay, again, good answer. And juror number 4 agrees, yes. Narrator's comments clearly show that his actions were coldly premeditated and not done in a mad frenzy. And Bob made a good comment that madness doesn't always mean frenzy, but I know that. But I agree also with this answer. Consider this statement. Oh, good, a quote. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him. All right, that's mine. So they copied my answer and changed the confidence level. Is it nothing but the truth? Again, nobody agrees with me. Juror number 1, let's see, posed brilliant mixing of truth and lies where lies ultimately win the day and destroys the self-deceiving man. Good answer, nice opinion. Number 2, narrator makes several statements that are implausible. For example, that he loved the old man despite his evil eye, or unverifiable. For example, for his gold, I had no desire. Would he have left it if he had gotten away with the murder? Again, good answer, and with the textual support. I like the quote. Juror number 3, I believe the plaintiff's statement simplifies the narrator's character, thus neglecting both his descent into madness and the untrustworthiness of his narrative, which misrepresents Poe's intended psychological exploration. Okay. So the juror number 3 takes a shot at my claim. That's perfectly fine. Again, I don't see any textual support for this answer, though. Juror number 4, don't know. It's undoubtedly the narrator's whole truth, but whether in reality is the whole truth is difficult to determine. Yes, that's true. Remember, this is a story, though, so there is no real reality. What is the deceit? Again, my answer is the deceit is mad. Let's see. Juror number 1 says, the deceit is that the man is in control and telling himself the truth when always he is lying to himself. Okay, he takes the opposite view. Juror number 2, the deceit is that the lie is manipulating. It was not clearly rational of the narrator to pretend madness and confess when he was apparently triumphant, as I said above. Maybe nervousness overwhelmed rationality. Juror number 3, the deception lies in claiming that the narrator is in control of his faculties and trustworthy. The events in the story clearly contradict this depiction. Juror number 4, is it deceit or illusion? Maybe he's feigning madness by the very nature of his denials of madness. Clever or crazy? Don't know. That's fair enough. Is the deceit or truth intended? I say yes. Everybody says no or don't know. Juror number 1 says no. The control is always a lie and it is unintended as a self-deceit. Juror number 2 says no. Again, maybe the nervousness overwhelmed rationality. Juror number 3 said no. The plaintiff probably didn't mean to deceive intentionally. They might just see the character's mental state differently. A conversation with the plaintiff might clarify their intentions. Okay. Juror number 4 says don't know. If sane, then the deceit is intended, but if he is mad, then there really isn't any deceit. That's a good point.
That's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm. What's the motivation behind the truth or lie? I say that he's a false display of madness to escape punishment. Juror number 2 copied me. How about that? Juror number 1 says the motivation behind the self-deceit is to believe he is in reliable control of his faculties, 100%. Juror number 3, I'm not sure what the motivation is. To understand the motivation, we would need a better understanding of the plaintiff's interpretation of the story and what they intended. Yes. And number 4, I'm not sure. Also, if the narrator's account were given in the context of a trial, then I might view his comments as an attempt to evade punishment. But in the tale, he seems to be just ranting. And that's true. We can't tell. And again, I think that's by the design of the author to keep us guessing. What's the social acceptability? I don't know. Juror number 1 says it's unacceptable. Self-deceit can be incredibly unacceptable socially. Juror number 2 and juror number 4 copied my answer. Juror number 3 doesn't know. The acceptability of the lie would depend on the level of scrutiny and how much accuracy matters in a particular situation. Okay, and finally, what label would improve this? Juror number 2 copied my label. Juror number 1, this is a case where self-deception to deceive others can lead to self-deception that destroys you. Yes. Person who is not mad but logical and transactional in self-deception and deception of others can lead to self-deception, which is madness. That's interesting. Okay. And let's see, subjective perspective or alternative interpretation. I like this one. This labeling acknowledges that the plaintiff is presenting their own interpretation of the story. It allows for discussion and exploration. Yes. Juror number 4, this is one judgment of the narrator's reliability, but there's evidence for others. That's my answer. And this person changed confidence level. Okay, so that's the whole story. So in general, then, you can see, let me fold up this window. You can see then that that TruthCourt.net is applicable for a different kind of use than we have been using it for traditionally. And that while the jurors were able to answer a number of different questions about this narrator, this mythical or fictive narrator that Poe brought up, they were able to do so by using our same 8 verdict questions that we do to analyze other kinds of comments and things that we hear on the internet and in the media. So this opens up the door for this type of usage as an education tool. So I'm happy to see that. And I know that I thank the jurors, even though they're not familiar with the literary analysis format, and juror number 2 was apparently, but it's typical to support your answer with quotes, with text from the text when you're doing a close reading. But all in all, everybody did a very good job of dissecting the concept of whether or not the narrator was truthful or not. And they were able to do that through the enablement of our TruthCourt.net. So thank you very much, everyone. I invite you all to go to TruthCourt.net, sign up, and find something that you think may not be truthful or that you think is truthful, and invite some other folks to join you and set up your own case. And it's a lot of fun and it's easy, and it will show you some things about yourself and about others and about the topic you're exploring that you may not have considered before. So once again, thanks everyone. I appreciate it very much. Come back to see us next week.